Alright, welcome back everyone dito sa latest
Okay.
episode ng Deep Dive. We're joined by no less than of course our mentor, sensei extraordinaire, Professor Walden Bello. Thank you so much, Walden, for making time.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Richard.
As always, it's
I'm
a
glad
pleasure.
to join you.
As always, it's a pleasure. Walden, marami tayong gustong pag-usapan. Obviously, mamaya siguro mas pag-usapan natin yung issue ng corruption sa ating bansa. Itong debate whether, ano ba to, kung walang corruption, walang mahirap, or kung walang kahirapan, mas konting corruption. So may konting debate ngayon, di ba, about yung causality, symptoms, ano dapat ang focus natin. And of course, ikaw yung OG dito, Walden, because you have been the one at the forefront of this debate about, what causes corruption is also what causes poverty, which is bad economic policies, right? Bad policy packages. So,
Mhm.
bago natin pag-usapan yan, Walden, since you are a global intellectual extraordinaire, and I mean it with no backhanded compliment, kasi mga English, mahilig sila mag-backhanded eh. No, this is not backhanded at all.
Mm.
Walden, I saw some of your interventions and also some of the events you were promoting about what does the victory of someone like Zoran Mamdani mean not only for the United States but also for the global progressive movement. May matututo ba tayo bilang mga Pilipino, especially in progressive movement sa Pilipinas, considering this is quite an impossible thing, right? First of all, a person who's openly Muslim in a city which was at the heart of 9/11, so clearly there's a lot of Islamophobia there, let's be honest about it. Also, this person is
Mhm.
openly socialist or democratic socialist in the heart of global capitalism, right? I mean, the guy just ticks all the
Mhm.
boxes, right?
Yeah,
And of course, the youngest guy with not much of
yeah.
democratic experience whatsoever. So, what is your read of
Mhm.
Mamdani's victory in big picture and also in terms of implication for the Philippines?
Well, I think that in one way, it is the sign of a new generation that wants that's not caught up in the mentality of the old, and the sort of contradictions of the older generation. And um I think there was this interview uh, in the last few days of Peter Thiel, one of the billionaires that has been often regarded as as one of the people, as one of the billionaires like Musk, um, and others uh, uh, who have taken advantage of the last several years to amass massive wealth. And he said, that if you proletarianize the young, they will become socialist. And so I think that's a reading of the mentality of this generation that really feels in the United States and elsewhere that they don't have a stake in the establishment at this point because they don't see a future in it. So, on the one hand, there's that kind of generational rebellion. The other thing, of course, is that Trump intervened in the elections. He really made a threat to New York City that if it elected Mandani, that he would cut off federal funds. And then he openly endorsed the opposition to Mandani, which is Andrew Cuomo. And I think that really hit New Yorkers in a very sensitive way. They don't like that kind of threat going on. So I think Trump's intervention backfired really in this case. And then I think there's Mandani himself, where he both had a very fresh figure. He was not caught up in any sort of ideological kind of projections. He was very principled. At the same time, he had very, very pragmatic proposals like free buses and a control on rents. And he showed, that it wasn't that the mathematics was not the problem, that New York City could afford this, so long as it had reasonable taxes, especially on the rich. But so the combination of all of this coming together gave a lot of impetus globally to progressives that, hey, we if we do it right, like Mandani has, and we come across as principled, non-ideological, but still saying that we're socialists, then it's we can do it. So
Is
I,
this
I
like
think
common
it
sense
was,
socialism, like common sense socialism in a sense?
yes, yeah, it's common sense socialism. But the important thing was it was principled. No, and he articulated his beliefs, and he did not back down. And whether it was on Islam, whether it was uh, on
Zionism.
genocide, so he just I mean, people, I think, appreciate when people speak their beliefs and don't hide. I think that's something that was fresh with him. So it's a combination of all these factors that has galvanized, I think, progressives in both the U.S. and internationally. That the future is not that bleak, and that it doesn't belong to the fascist movements. The future can belong to us.
I want to drill into that, Walden, no? Marami tayong pinapag-usapan. Unang-una,
Mm.
yeah, I completely agree na very common sense yung policies ni Ma'am Dani, given yung high cost of living, given yung kalagayan ng mga katulad kong millennials na mahihirap pa rin lahat ng mga kaibigan ko.
Yeah,
Everyone is poor. Like, no one has a house. Most people
yeah,
marry or
yeah,
settle down. So, sobrang sensible din yung reading nila, even the oligarchs and billionaires also know what's going on. Now, interestingly, behind the scenes,
yeah.
I think even Trump said na very astute politician, si Zoran Mamdani, that even Trump is quite
Mhm.
impressed with his communication skills, his spontaneity. I mean, six languages like Arabic, although with the Egyptian Syrian
Yeah, yeah,
accent,
yeah.
Latino, everything. I think Urdu, Hindi,
Mm-mm.
everything. Like he did six languages. Um, but
Mm-mm.
his sense of timing was also brilliant, right? Like you're up against Como, you're up against the incumbent mayor. These are
Sure.
all discredited figures. So I think it was also very smart
Yes.
using this conjuncture, no?
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, no, no, definitely. And I think he put a congenial image, and he was earnest, and it was, he was very open, and that contrasted with the bullying image of Trump. So I think one of his merits or his talents was to cast himself as the anti-Trump, and Trump fell right into the trap, in of acting as Trump, bullying and everything, and that is not something that people in New York appreciated. But the other thing too that I think that's happening is that, oh, during I was in the U.S. During uh, the elections, the campaign elections in 2024 for several months. And I wrote about the fact that there were three things that really um, made the difference in terms of the results. One was inflation. Uh, Two was a sense that wars were breaking out everywhere. Uh, and third was a sense that the administration of Biden was not able to articulate an immigration policy. It was that's I wrote about that. people who voted then were not voting, most of them ideologically. They weren't voting for a right-wing ideology or even fascism. They were just very, very much concerned about these three things. And I think the problem of Trump has been to think that the vote for him was really a vote, for a major ideological shift. Okay, a far right kind of thing, which he came like gangbusters. He did from the very start. But if you look at the results in New York, in New Jersey, and in Virginia,
Virginia.
these governors, they won by wide margins, and they were, and so, but it seems like people are basically saying that he's gone too far, no? That Trump has just gone too far in terms of interpreting his victory as basically a far right kind of transformation for the states. So for the US. So I think that um, I think this is a reaction, definitely, I think, to Trump. So so I think all of these factors, have played in, and to some extent, I think that the Democrats have been really heartened by this victory because, as you know, Richard, before the elections, it seemed like the Democratic Party was really did not know where to go, and I think that this has given them a sense that Trump is not invincible, but of course they have a lot of work to do. They have a lot of work to do, but hey, 2026, that's going to be the midterm election. And I think the Republicans are now really worried. And, I think they're beginning to compromise even on the government shutdown, funding the federal government. The latest is that there's now a compromise formula in the US Senate that will end the government shutdown. So without the elections, I don't think the Republicans would have budged. Now, I think that they're beginning to really worry, especially now that inflation is really, really getting high again in the United States. And I think the Democrats will probably run on the economic issues, just like Trump ran on the economic issues in 2024. And so I think it's going to be really exciting at this point in time. So, on the one hand, there's the Gen Z kind of element. There is people are not caught up in the old anti-socialist thing. And then there's the economic situation in the United States, and then there's Trump overreach, and this is turning out to be a perfect storm for Trump.
Although this is not the first time, no, Walden. I mean, nakita natin yung midterm elections before, I mean, during
Sure,
previously. I mean, generally midterms go anti-incumbent, and we also saw in the past, no, there were multiple setbacks for Trump.
sure,
Actually, two midterms, one in between the Biden administration, one in
sure,
between his first administration.
sure,
But women
yeah,
issues were very important, no? We saw
yeah, right.
suburban women coming out, so yung issues about abortion, among others. But
Hmm.
this time it
Hmm.
looks like in cost of living issues and also rejection of
Hmm.
extremism, you would say, a form of right-wing extremism. Do you think medyo more ideological or anti-far right ideology ang direction of the wind for people are leaning more Democrat?
Yeah, well, I think that they're more open now to uh, the Democrats and to the left, basically. I think that, I think that what I would not say that at this point in time, people have thought about socialism as the alternative. But the important thing is, I think they become more open in that direction. And I think the important thing still is who reflects their interests. And if they think that Trump has gone too far in terms of his immigration raids, and most Americans now feel that way, and that he can't control inflation, and that he's just going too far, interpreting his mandate as a wholesale far right transformation of the United States. I think those are the key things that are now operating, that are opening the possibilities for Democrats, including progressive Democrats.
So Hakim Jeffries, no, yung minority leader sa
Yeah.
Kongreso, was openly asked, is Zohran Mamdani the future of the Democratic Party? And he point blank said no, right? Do you think the Democratic establishment is worried by the victory of Zohran Mamdani? Do you think they want Zohran not to do well? I mean, isn't it interesting that Obama also reached out to Zohran Mamdani? And I think Obama is still one of the most astute Democratic
Mhm, mhm,
operators
mhm,
since
mhm,
Bill
mhm, mhm.
Clinton. So we can say
Sure.
all about his legacy, but he's a very
Mhm,
smart
mhm.
guy. And I think
Sure.
he can also viscerally connect. To be
Mhm,
honest, medyo naging more sympathetic ako kay Obama when I realized how racism is really real.
mhm.
I mean, sometimes it's easy to
Sure,
forget
sure,
how,
sure.
I mean, grabe yung mga attacks kay Ma'am Dani on people of South Asian or Muslim. It's just the brazen
Yeah, yeah.
racism online in
Right. Yeah,
2025 is quite shocking, which made him more
yeah,
actually empathetic to Obama. Now I
yeah.
imagine maybe Obama was internalizing a lot of these kumaga, racist limitations and backlash with varying degrees of success. But Obama is reaching out to Zoran Mamdani, while other
Mhm.
Democratic establishment folks are kind of trying to be lukewarm about him. But Hillary Clinton also was very, very, I would say, talagang all out congratulations kay Mamdani. Do you think eventually they have to come to terms with the rise of this new generation of more progressive Democratic leaders?
Uh, I I think so. I think they're probably realizing that the old machine politics, yeah, does not appeal to this new generation, and that what they've been projecting was ultra pragmatism, and don't take up issues that if they're too polarizing and all of that. So I think that Obama certainly, I think, now sees that the sort of very pragmatic kind of don't rock the boat type of democratic politics, party politics, doesn't work anymore. So um, I think there will still be some resistance, because after all, you have a whole generation of Democratic Party leaders who were raised in this machine politics. But I think the younger people probably would be, or the younger people, millennials and Gen Z, uh, would probably be much, much more open now to really a revision of politics. But it all depends really, partly. They will be watching New York like a hawk. Both the right and the center and the left will be watching New York. And if Mandani is even halfway successful in terms of delivering, then I think that's going to be for many a really positive sign. My only worry at this point in time is not just the polarization, but just the way that the politics of the gun is now
I mean, we saw
becoming
it.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my worry too.
A- and
Yeah,
and
Charlie
and
Kirk. Yeah.
and yeah, and I think this is quite worrisome, because I think when different factions begin to think, that the only way to resolve making sure that your political opponents don't get power, or if they're in power, to eliminate them, is by the gun, then I think, and I think it's going to worsen, which is why the first thing that I thought about when Mandani won was,
His
this guy
safety.
has to be really, this guy has to be really, really
Yun nga eh.
conscious about security. And I think because ever since the Charlie Kirk thing, you know, there's a lot of what I would say now is really, you know, non-electoral kind of temptations in the US to resolve issues.
Yeah, yung extremism, no? I mean, I was just in Canada as a visiting scholar when the Charlie Kirk situation happened, and some of the Canadians I talked to were saying, we won't be surprised at some point papunta sa civil war ulit yan. I mean, the US was the site of the first modern civil war. Uh,
Sure.
do
Yeah.
you think it's an exaggerated fear to worry about US moving in that direction if God forbid something
No,
tragic again
I
happens?
don't think so. I think even before the you know, during the first Trump administration, and the rise of the militias, and January 6th,
Mga
I
Proud
think,
Boys,
of 2021, I think that Trump's coming to power sort of deep, made things a bit calmer. But if, for instance, he had not won in 2024, I can see that um, it might have had an outcome that could have been violent. So I, when even people within the CIA have been writing books about the dangers of civil war in the United States, owing to racism and a number of other factors, you have to take it seriously. I think that that is a real. I think that's a real threat, especially now. I think what we're going to see is Trump um, becoming polarizing again, and I think there will be sectors of the right that will say, "Oh my God, the victory that we got in 2024 might now be stolen from us," and it will be, as we know, the far right is very well armed in the United States, and of course, this will have repercussions for the U.S. security establishment, and uh, Trump brought Hesget, exit his defense secretary, brought all these generals to Washington in September, where they were lecturing the generals. And what was very interesting there was that he was hardly applauded. And so I think the national security establishment could really be rocked by developments over the next, few months. Um, I would. So my sense is the prospect. We should not rule out civil war in the United States, and at this point in time, we should not rule out some sort of extra constitutional, even military kind of um, way to resolve crisis in the United States. So I would say that in many ways, I think we're going to be back in the George Floyd era. In when this black a person who was killed by a policeman, and the sort of polarization that took place then. So my sense, Richard, is yes, there's not only the electoral dimension that we need to look at in the US, but we also need to look at the non-electoral dimension. And certainly your friends in Canada who told you that it could be civil war, that's probably a lesson to them that they should not even entertain joining the United States, as Trump had said.
They were all, yeah, they were, the Canadian mindset now, di ba? Sobrang,
Yeah,
everyone is in a defensive mode. I never thought the Canadians had that in them. Yung sobrang US
of course. Yeah.
bashing. Yeah, I was very impressed by how Canadians are holding their side of the bargain. Now let's talk about the Philippines because you
Sure.
mentioned I mean, we can go on forever about the US, a country you know very well. Well,
Sure,
then,
sure, sure, sure.
for the purpose of our audience, inisip ko rin may relevance din tong discussion mo because this month, November, there are worries that there could also be extra constitutional efforts amid the explosion of corruption scandals and public anger. Multiple religious groups who are not necessarily known for pushing for the most progressive candidates or kind of politics
Mhm.
are expected to magsasagawa sila ng sarili nilang version, I don't know, people power or whatever they want to call it.
Mhm.
Ano yung take mo dito? Yeah, elbows up. Take mo dito, Walden, on etong sitwasyon sa Pilipinas because I think in principle, completely understandable. Marami sa ating kababayan ay nawawala ng pag-asa sa sistema natin. This is a system you have worked with and you at one point gave up on when you resigned from the Congress. Etong trapo politics natin. But what about political violence? What is your concern about political violence in the Philippines, especially after what we also saw in Mendiola nung September during the September 21 protest? Was that a warning shot? Do you think things also could move in a non-electoral, extra-constitutional direction sa Pilipinas amid the outrage over corruption? And of course, the
Well,
Duterte Marcos dynamics too, feeding off on each other.
yes. Well, again, we need to look at uh, this combination. There's also a perfect storm in the Philippines. The natural disasters, the flood control scams, and the way that people connect that to natural disasters, the weakening economy. It's now, the growth is really going, projections down.
4% corruption.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and the peso is now what? It's almost 59 to a dollar. And so just this sense of and the sense that nothing's going to happen because nobody's been prosecuted yet, and the independent commission is finding it so hard to make itself credible. So I think throughout there's a great deal of disenchantment with um, any short-term good outcome to this. And I think it's, that's the sort of mood that you have right now. Now the we have to see what's going to happen with the religious groups. I think it's the INC you're talking about, right? And the big
Multiple.
rallies
Actually, there'll
that's
be multiple religious groups coming together. Three at least, I was
yeah,
told.
yeah. So uh, that has to be looked at fairly closely, because there's a mixture there of anger. At the same time, there's a mixture of some political forces are manipulating, some forces within that, and uh, and at the same time, the only thing that the only seeming barrier to more anger on the streets is the Christmas season coming up. So that's the only sort of thing that's making dampening things down a bit, aside from the typhoons, of course, because it's so hard for people to mobilize once you have the typhoon. So, but in any event, what I'm just saying is that um, uh, we cannot sort of dismiss the possibility of a extra constitutional solution. It need not necessarily involve the military. It could be kind of an EDSA sort of thing, EDSA 1 or EDSA 2 kind of thing. And it could and the different forces that could be involved may have different motivations. Some sincerely uh, angry about corruption. Some people not so sincerely, but wanting to use popular protests as a means of coming to power. And of course, you also have the Gen Z factor, just like in the U.S., but as well as in Sri Lanka, in
Nepal,
Bangladesh.
yeah, Indonesia.
You do have people who have lost real faith in the establishment. and in the establishment kind of politics. So, and those people in on who were there with their the one piece flag on September 21 uh, on the streets in Manila, um, reflect this thing to, like, it might seem to be anarchic, uh, but I doubt very much if this is of if those people were manipulated. I think it was more just real frustration, and then seeing that, hey, there are similar people who think throughout the world like we do, and they've been able to bring down governments. So I think that that's percolating at this point in time. So we're entering my sense is we're entering a quite a dangerous period in terms of institutional politics, because there are several factors that are in play at this point in time. Um, there's no force that is providing a stabilizing kind of leadership, because the administration, as you know, has now been sucked into a sense that it's just defending people like Romualdez and a number of other people who are deep into this flood control scandal. So that's the and I know that there have been letters going around uh, um, asking Marcos to, hey, Mr. President, please make sure that there's a resolution. These people must be prosecuted. But let's face it, Richard, he this guy's a very weak guy, okay, uh, and doesn't seem
And no
to
credibility on
really,
good governance. I mean, this is
yeah,
smart.
no credibility and that sort of thing. So that's why I found the letters being circulated asking him to please. It's 3 months now that you revealed the scandals. Please act on them. It's sort of a bit pathetic, because and asking him to act against his dear cousin seems to be like, oh my God, is this in fact even realistic? But this is the problem that I think right now there's no center holding the country together, um, uh, in terms of governance, in terms of government at this point in time. So um, uh, and probably uh, um, uh, and I'm not exactly sure if this is a
Yun nga
good or
eh.
a bad thing.
Yun nga eh.
Uh, because this might just be uh, an opportunity. It's a crisis, but it's also an opportunity for people to get their act together and say, "This is it. We've had it." And you mentioned uh, uh, taking a stand is very important, and Marquez won't cut it. And I think people have to really take a stand. And as I wrote an article just on this, that I resigned from Congress out of principle back in 2015 as a stand against corruption, which was then you know a problem with the Aquino government when it was having double standards, and of course, and the other thing too is that, as you know, I've been the subject of a cyber libel case by the vice president's camp, uh, and it's because I took the debate seriously back in 2022, that, hey, if you're going to run for office, you've got to be able to defend your record. And that's what I was trying to do. But you know what, Richard, I was, during that election, I was sort of amazed that none of the politicians wanted to attack one another during that campaign, not even Lenny. in terms of exposing the opponent's record. And that gave me a sense that I think what is happening right now is, that
Although Lenny and Pacquiao attacked Marcos, BBM. I mean, to be fair, they did attack BBM, but like among each other, parang medyo mabait.
no, right, yeah. But even it was very soft. The attacks on BBM, like it just was like he didn't appear on
Sabi,
the
sinungaling siya, sabi nila.
in the debate. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a rule among politicians that says,
Don't
if you
rock the
don't
boat.
want me to attack you, don't attack me. And I think this is the reason why there's no prosecution still, and there won't be any. We might, in this, over the next, few months. So this is the kind of mess that our younger people are confronting. And I think September 21 on Mendiola was a wake-up call. And my sense is that they're not, I admire their impatience, and I hope that they can wield that together into a political movement that will in fact make our politicians accountable. So, uh, as I said, it seems very dark at this point for the country, but it could also be an opportunity. But people will just have to take a stand, personal stand, in terms of um, in terms of confronting the really degenerate politics that we have right now.
So, pag-usapan natin yan, Walden. In theory ba, yung mga civil society groups, I mean, now we have Cardinal David, well, I mean, Ronald Llamas, our good friend, among others, Kiko D, among others, they're all getting involved in terms of creating a kind of a third force. Meron ba tayong third force at paano pwede maging truly progressive yung kanilang intervention? At given how things are sensitive and there are extra constitutional temptations, there's a Marcos Duterte thing, there's a US-China thing. Paano natin pwede navigate yan? Who could become that center of gravity or a
Well,
locomotive for transformative change?
yes, and I think I'm really looking to the younger people here, and I'm really looking especially at Gen Z, um, because I don't think the Gen Z people have any illusions at this point in time about the importance of the preservation of things or politics as it exists in the country. So my constant interventions has been that Gen Z really has to find its voice. Now, the problem right now is that the so-called third force that emerged from the elections um, has de facto really become aligned with Malacanang. Okay, and I think the sense is that uh, it's a politics of the lesser evil. Okay, Marcos and company are the lesser evil compared to the Dutertes. And the problem is that I don't think that politics is works anymore. I think if the stench of corruption, especially with Romualdez, and the way that's dragging in the Marcoses, it, it sort of eliminates or weakens the rationale for even a de facto alliance with these people. And that's why my sense is before the window of opportunity shuts down, uh, the people that we had been hoping would be the third force, like Rizon Tiveros and Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan and Laila de Lima, they really have to constitute themselves as a real alternative at this point in time, because again, there's a saying: if you lie with the dogs, you will get the lies of the dogs. Okay, and that's the big danger, because the one thing that people like Laila and Risa have is a priceless one, which was integrity, a sense of integrity, and this kind of short-term alliance politics with the Marcoses, you know, would tarnish, this asset that they have, because they don't have assets in terms of resources, etc., etc. But there's that one thing, which is, a sense that they're for good governance, they're for integrity, and they have a record to prove it. Laila has what, 7 years in jail, and Risa has just this fantastic record. They really should be able to to mm, to create this force that will use both electoral and non-electoral civil society means, to to present itself as an alternative to the Filipino people. I think unless they do that, my sense, this is just my sense, is Sara Duterte is going to run away with the 2028 elections, for lack of an alternative being given to people.
I hear you, Walden. I think the slight, I would say, divergence from your reading, not the normative aspect, but your reading of the situation is that some people say it's not about lying with the dog, but having like a 10-foot pole just to keep healthy distance while you're keeping the bear away, right? Because if the you kill the dog and the bear comes over, we're all dead. So it's more of a kind of a sequential and tactical kind of decision. It's not a strategic decision. And you could see that. I mean, for instance, like on I think yung budget ng Kongreso ay ni-reject nila Laila de Lima and a lot of people in the minority. You can see Rizal Tiveros is never there defending. In fact, she voted against the budget. So I don't know. Some would say in theory, actually, you can have kind of a sequential and tactical decisions so that you first avoid the return of Duterte's, because I think if Sara comes back, good luck talaga. It's going to be 10 times worse. But again, doesn't make Marcos any better. But at the same time, also, Marcos is going to be a lame duck soon, right? In a year or two. So if you can pin down Marcos and prevent the return of Duterte's, that puts the third force in a position to take over by 2028, or if not earlier or something like that. But again, these are probably tactical contingent debates, Walden. It depends on what is your reading of the granular situation on the ground. But that is usually the counter argument I see to the legitimate concern that you raise, na whether Team Kasamaan or Team Kadiliman, you have to make sure you have a 10 pole, post between the two of you. But Walden, last point here, I want to discuss on
But
the
but
issue. Yeah, please,
but
please,
I just wanted to say that
please.
it's the people's perception that is very,
100%
very
perception
important,
matters. Yeah. And the
and that,
Duterte side is doing that, Walden. But that's the thing eh.
yeah.
The Duterte side are also attacking. Sabihin niya,
Mhm.
oh kayo mga tuta niya, ganito, ganyan, tuta kayo ni Marcos. So it's not just a perception thing. It's that's a
Sure,
propaganda attack also of the
sure, sure,
Duterte side, which
sure.
which says the threat you're mentioning actually should be dealt with, probably in terms of better
Yeah,
communication and more principled
yeah,
positioning.
yeah. But that's what I say, that if if the idea of this sequential strategy, really depends on people's perception.
Restrain, yeah, it's very
And
restrained.
because at some point, the strategy may no longer be valid, because people's perception has consolidated that, hey, there's really no alternative at this point that's worth supporting, who support good governance,
Aha, then
because,
they'll go for purely extra constitutional. That's what you're saying. They might
yeah,
give up on
yeah,
every. Okay, that's a valid point,
yeah,
Walden. I
yeah,
think that didn't come out very well. Na parang kasi sabi niya, oh, so Walden, di ba, the counter gaslighting with, oh, so Walden, you want the Dutertes to come back? Parang ganun, di ba? We're gonna go down this ridiculous argument. Your point is valid, which is if
yes.
mawala ng pag-asa ang tao sa lahat ng mga grupo,
Mm,
sabi nila, just
mm,
burn down
yeah,
the house, which is even a worse opens up even a worse possible. That's a very legitimate debate, Walden.
Yeah.
Huling-huli, Walden, gusto kong pag-usapan yan dahil ikaw yung pinaka-OG dito. Itong issue ng moral politics sa Pilipinas. I think lahat naman tayo, sangayon tayo na corruption is evil, whether you're atheist or theist, it's evil, it's ethically wrong. Having said that, Walden, ikaw, isa sa mga pinaka, I would say, substantial thinkers and contributors to this whole idea that actually, yung ugat ng problema ay hindi corruption. Corruption is a symptom of an even deeper evil. And
Mhm.
that evil is really incompetence and lack of really transformative economic policies. Do you want to discuss that? Because Walden, nagiging malaking issue ngayon yan eh. Because bumabalik na naman tayo dito sa motto ng walang corruption, kung walang corrupt, walang mahirap, which basically says all you need is just a good governance candidate and everything will be fine. But I think all of us can agree that we need way more than just being clean. Because more than being clean, you need competency. And part of that competency is good economic policies that actually create growth and development so that there's no vote buying, there's no voter manipulation, there's an empowered civil society, all of these things. Pwede natin balikan yan, Walden, because I think this is one of your most important intellectual contributions that speaks to the moment right now.
Well, I would say that, I mean, first of all, corruption is, we must really, really oppose corruption and expose it, you know. But again, as you say, will it just be at the level of exposure and, sort of denouncing it? And I think that's a very short-sighted thing, as you said. We really need to be able to look at the class structure, how the class structure in the Philippines suffocates people, and really just gives the benefits to a few. And then, of course, there's the economic policies which have strangled any kind of growth in the Philippines. The neoliberal economic policies, which we've swallowed under the push of the IMF and the World Bank and the UP School of Economics people. And basically, so there's this strangled hold of economic policies, a very um, a, 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 a a class system in which upward mobility for most people is an impossibility because of the way that just a few dynasties control things. And then the lack of any kind of ideas to be able to free us from both this alliance between the class system and neoliberal economics, so that in the end, people just give up and they just migrate abroad. So I think that that this is really where we need to look at the question of corruption. While it must be opposed, we must really realize, that we really need major social reform in this country, in terms of real land reform and real asset redistribution, and we really need to create, we need economic policies that protect us, from, the transnational corporations, and the policies of the World Trade Organization, and all of this kind of policies which have destroyed our economic sovereignty and made just a plaything of powerful economies and powerful corporations. So, um, so we need to have a really progressive political economy back, and I think this is something that you and others have also been pushing, because unless we address the fact that we don't have, that the neoliberal kind of free market economics has been a disaster, and that we need the state to come in a very progressive but very strong way, then then this cycle of corruption and corruption and corruption will just, really continue. Let me just say that, if you look at so many of our neighbors, for instance, and I made this argument back in with respect to South Korea and China and even Thailand and others,
Even Vietnam now. So
even Vietnam. Yes, I mean, they followed calibrated policies of that combined protection and at the same time income redistribution, and they just they had a managed economy instead of an economy that was completely open like us. Uh, uh, and I think that that did create a middle class. And despite the fact that, say, as you put it, Richard, of course, China is full of corruption, but at the same time, China was able to reduce poverty to 2% of the population. And that's the World Bank figure. In other words, basically, there was economic policy that was working and that was creating a middle class and that was creating growth and with the kind of with this kind of more reinvigorated economy, you reduce the possibility for corruption uh, to take place on such a large scale. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it gets eliminated, and even Xi Jinping at this point in time has his big anti-corruption campaign, but at least you address the structural reasons that produce corruption, and you do not just leave it up to the market to solve things, which has been the big illusion among our technocrats.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the list of the least corrupt countries, no, yung sa CPI among others, ito yung pinaka-equal or egalitarian countries. So clearly you can see there's a relationship between high inequality and also levels of corruption. At saka, it's also interesting that the Philippines corruption ranking is almost the same as Turkey and Thailand and Brazil, and yet those are countries that have twice, three times per capita income than the Philippines and way lower poverty rates. All of this says that something else explains bakit may poverty sa
Sure,
Pilipinas and all of these problems. So in short, what you're saying is that hindi lang sapat ipakulong natin yung mga kurakot na politiko kung hindi natin tignan yung kondisyones, no, that give birth to corruption, right? And if you want to
yeah,
really look at the root of corruption, you have to really look at the root of political dynasties, of inequality and bad economic policies that have placed the country where it is. So kumbaga, hindi tayo against fighting corruption. We are all for fighting against corruption, but we feel
sure,
it should be part of a bigger package of progressive
sure,
economic reform. On that note, thank you so much, Walden. We're just 1 hour. Sobrang breezy whenever talking to you.
sure.
Really breezy. Thank you so much, Walden, for that. Is there any recent article that you want to plug in here for people who want to read more about your specific analysis of not only the Mamdani phenomenon, but also the corruption debate sa Pilipinas?
Well, I wrote an article for Rappler that came out about 3 weeks ago. It's called "On Civil Resistance," and it basically stressed the fact that we must take a stand personally, even if it hurts, and that's it's not marches that will do it. It's civil resistance that will do it. And so I think that's sort of the other thing is that I would, although it was published back, the last thing was in 2008, last edition, The Political Economy of Permanent Crisis in the Philippines, that was published by the UP Press. I think it still makes a number
Absolutely.
of valid points about where we're at this point in time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Walden. All of us are indebted to you. Leloya has a new book, of course, which many ways actually puts more meat into this kind of discussion we have, which is dapat
Sure,
maintindihan
sure.
natin yung ugat ng
I've just ordered that book and I want to
absolutely.
make a review of it.
Empower
And
posterity. So bad economic policies also explain a lot of our problems today.
yeah.
Fantastic book. Our also good friend, si Jesus Felipe, our good friend from ADB back in the day. He's gonna come
Mm.
also with a new book about political economy of development in the Philippines. He also, similar to you, argues that corruption is more of a symptom of a deeper problem, right? What we need is to
Oh,
bring
yeah.
growth, to bring down poverty. So we have many sensible people coming out with a lot of great stuff. But in many ways, Walden, we are all your students and we're indebted to your great contribution on this front. Mabuhay ka, Walden, and looking forward to catching up, hopefully in December with Ronald. Let's do that Gramscian Marcos to Marx
Yep.
series again. Tatlo tayo. Si Ronald
Okay, and
asking,
B,
kailan yung next
I
natin?
hope you're doing okay in Oxford,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I'm doing okay and looking
when
forward to catching up with you
when you visit the ICC,
yes.
give my regards to our friend who's now nakakulong doon.
Well, inintay namin si Bato at saka si baka
Okay.
may group Hague na sila dyan. So hintayin namin sana may group Hague. So Walden, thank you very
Yeah.
much for recommending
Okay.
for me to be a little bit around Europe. So malapit din ako sa ICC just in case there's development. Mabuhay ka,
Yeah.
Walden, and talk to you soon.
Okay.
God bless.
Okay. Bye bye.